in 2015 when we first got a hint that Porsche were doing something a little bit different. Something without an engine. That something was the Mission E prototype. And when I first saw that car, I thought, wow, you know what, that is a great looking car. Definitely looks like a classic Porsche. It's got those design cues, but isn't. And it got me way more excited about an EV than a Tesla ever could. Tesla just looks like a basic car to me, as good as they may be for those that drive them. But I saw this car and thought, wow, you know what, I could actually get on board with one of those, provided, of course, it was any good. So it was 2 years later that we had that car officially announced as going into production. And Porsche investing, I think, about 6 billion euros in EV-ification, if I can use that word. So really kind of interesting times for Porsche, and we knew that that car back then would be called the Taycan. That car was finally unveiled in 2019, and it was getting rave reviews. People really on board with this car. The performance was phenomenal. You could launch it as many times as you like. The performance numbers themselves were absolutely ludicrous. It drove really well and kind of broke the barriers for just what an EV could do, or a production EV could do, in terms of performance. And I think we often overlook, it's easy to do so now given where we are with Taycans, we often overlook just what they'd actually achieved back then. When I first saw a Taycan on the roads, I thought, wow, that's a really good looking car. Sleek, graceful, purposeful, eerily quiet as well. Even with that sports sound that I heard, and thought, you know what, it's kind of quite cool. It was a Crayon 4S that I first saw on the road, and I really liked it. I thought, you know what, as a McLaren owner at the time as well, very much a petrol car, I thought I'd really like to give this car a try. So I did. I went out for a test drive in a Taycan Turbo S, a white one. It's on the channel. And you know what? I was quite frankly blown away. The performance of this car, the comfort of the car, the handling of the car, the smoothness of the car, it was just brilliant. I was really kind of gobsmacked. My eyes were propped firmly open, and I didn't anticipate it being quite such a good car. Kind of, you know, writing it off already because it doesn't have all of those pistons flying about inside that block to create that theatre. But it did it very well, and I'm driving around in one today because that got me excited about the car. And yes, I went ahead and pulled the trigger on that car, and just kind of assuming, right, that it would have that Porsche reliability built in as standard. The thing with the Taycan is it got off to a great start because we didn't have hindsight. We didn't have all of this usage out there, people's real world usage of these cars to review, to look at, to look back on. Was it working as expected? Was it behaving? Was it reliable? And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Now, still a huge fan of this car. It's going to take a lot to put me off this car. And most people's experiences, I have to say, with this car have been pretty good, which is great. It's really good to read that because I want it to succeed. I don't want this car to fail. I think it's a great car and it deserves to do well. But there have been issues. There's been plenty of recalls. We know there's been Heatergate. We know there's kind of Batterygate going on as well. And there's plenty of folk that have unfortunately had issues as well. But it's been very easy to forget right now, where we are right now with Porsche, that indeed they make combustion cars and they do it very well. They pivoted really hard to EVs. We've seen, of course, the Cayman Boxster platform disappear in favour of an EV platform. The Macan has been completely replaced with an EV platform. What does that leave us with from a petrol perspective? Well, we've got the 911. We always need that, right? We have the Cayenne and we have the Panamera. A very limited set of options, I'd certainly say, very limited set of options. And those people that like the Macan combustion version don't like EVs, well, there's nothing out there for them right now. And honestly, it's very hard for me to look at a Macan or a Cayenne or even a Panamera and get excited. Even though this is based on the Panamera, it just looks a lot better. I don't know why. The Panamera doesn't do it for me. This does. So, hard for me to look at a Macan or a Cayenne, and I think even harder if that Macan is EV only, and it's put a lot of people off. It really has put a lot of people off. And this is the reality of the situation that we're in right now, that Porsche have effectively kind of, it feels like they've withdrawn completely from combustion engine cars, right? Or are trying to.
Now, you may have seen that recently Porsche's filed a patent for a 6-stroke engine, but honestly, I do not think this will ever see the light of day, unfortunately.
And this is pretty sad in a way, because Porsche themselves, it is something they do brilliantly. The 911 is one of the most respected sports cars ever made. It's been around for 60 years and on the whole is fantastically reliable as a car. Okay, we've had issues, we've had liner scoring, we've had IMS issues, but on the whole the platform has been very, very good and continues to be very good. But I think the cracks are potentially even starting to show there as well, right? And that is, of course, with that new 911 hybrid version. You kind of have to, or will have to have, a hybrid version going forwards. And this is the problem. When you hybridize something, it becomes more complex. It often becomes heavier. And it changes the way it handles and the way it drives. And for me, that's going to put a lot of 911 owners off potentially, and it will have to appeal to a new market. But it's very easy to forget that Porsche are brilliant at making combustion engine cars like the 911 because they've gone so hard on EVs. And we've got to look at the Taycan again, in terms of the success story it's been for Porsche. At least it was the success story for Porsche. I think when it was first released, maybe in the first year or so, it outsold the 911. So serious sales figures. And I think now we're at about 150, maybe 160,000 Taycans sold in total, which is brilliant in terms of the numbers. A real runaway success story. And of course, when this car did launch through COVID, there were supply chain shortages, the prices of these things went up, you could flip them for overs. Who'd have ever thought we would be in this situation now with the prices depreciating so much? But it was a runaway success story. But then of course, everything seemed to fall apart. Everything in Taycan land, everything in Porsche EV land started to fall apart. Sales absolutely plummeted. People just kind of giving up on these, maybe thinking they're overpriced. And heads have rolled in the Porsche boardroom. Lutz Meschke and Detlef von Platten have both just been ousted. I think one was finance and the other was marketing, right? And those guys potentially, because they're funding too much EV and pushing the EV agenda too much, too hard for those Porsche stalwarts, those Porsche fans who love and nurture and cherish their combustion cars. So is this Porsche getting back to its roots now for as long as it can? Has it gone too far down EV road to pull back? We know Merc have recently announced they are no longer making those dedicated EV platforms. They're just not making them anymore. What they will do is make standard cars, combustion version cars, and EVify those so they all look the same. Those EQ cars that you've seen out there are going to be no longer, because it's just too extreme for people to get on board with. I think that EQS was a love it or hate it design, and it's just too much. It just screams I'm an EV. Too much for people to get on board with. Those fans that like the brand for its combustion heritage. So Porsche definitely in a real conundrum right now with the strategy and having to pull back and change their minds almost. And this is when it gets very interesting. What does it mean? Because we know that new 718 is at the 983 electrified Boxster platform is just round the corner. We've seen some spy shots, it's been teased, but what is it going to look like? What is it going to drive like, more crucially? Because I just think those Porsche traditionalists are not interested in that car. It's a new market again, and it might be brilliant, who knows? I don't want to poo-poo it till I've seen it and driven it, given it a go, given it a chance, right? I'm open-minded about these things. I have petrol cars as well, and a diesel car, and will continue to do so for as long as I can. That's the beauty of choice. That's the beauty of consumer choice. Being able to try different things, be able to have a bit of excitement, get your kicks in different ways sometimes. But this car, this Taycan now, when it was released back then, and it was wowing everyone with its performance and its build quality, no one would probably ever have predicted that it would end up like this, with people walking away, people giving up on them, people just had enough, and the value's reflecting that right now. Even that GT version has significantly tanked in value already, and it's only just dropped, and wow, I've got my eyes on one of those used potentially. So we are in a pickle right now. Well, Porsche are in a bit of a pickle right now, and this moment in time is absolutely crucial for them to get the strategy sorted, that go forward strategy sorted, and ensure that they are absolutely still catering for their existing enthusiasts however they can, for as long as they can. Taycan. That's it for this one. Stay safe, stay well, see you on the next one, and bye for now.